Hi, everyone. This is Randy Burton here, and this is Real Talk with Randy, episode 9. And I thought it would be fun to kind of share my story about, how I got into recruiting, kind of talk a little bit about the progression of my career, and, share some lessons learned, kind of after reflecting on the journey that I've had and, all the experiences that I've gained. So, like everyone has an interesting story about how they got into recruiting. It's honestly one of my favorite questions to ask of candidates. And so, heck, why not share my own? So here we go. So rewind back to good old 1999. I was 16 years old, a junior in high school, no job, kind of a troublemaker, you know, a typical teenager, feeling like they know everything in the world and pretty much untouchable, that kind of stuff, right? I had chores to do around the house, of course, and got an allowance, but it was never really enough to do all the fun things that I wanted to do, right? So one day it was a Friday afternoon and, had a weekend of fun planned with all my friends. But I only really had like 20 bucks in my pocket and knew that wouldn't be enough for all the fun. So, I went to my mom and I was like, hey, I've got some fun plans this weekend. Can I have some more money? Or is there other things that I can do, around the house to make a few extra bucks? And, I'll kind of pause there because, I want to provide a little bit of a backstory, right? So, my mom is Gigi Burton, and she had been in the staffing industry for well over 30 years. She still recruits today, and at the time was a enterprise account executive for a very large consulting organization. Although she had some side hustles going on, and at the time she was really, really busy with her full time job, and just did not have any time for these side hustle opportunities that she had sourced through her network, right? She had people hitting her up like, hey, I need help finding this type of person, yada, yada. Okay. So back to the story. So, when I asked my mom for extra money and if there was other things to do around the house, to make a few more extra bucks, her eyes lit up and she was like, yes, actually there is. So, turns out she had two searches active, that she had committed to present candidates for and just didn't have the time, right? So she was like, come up to the office and sat me down and put me in front of a fax machine, handed me a couple of those, Rolodexes and said, here's a job description. These are the top three things the client is looking for. And, here's the fax machine. Resumes will come out of it. And you need to review to see if they fit the criteria. The contacts in these Rolodexes are my contacts. She said, call them, describe the role, the client, ask if they know someone. Then she told me that if I find the right match for the person and they get hired, that she'd give me the whole fee. And I was kind of looking through some of the information that she had gathered on these roles, and they were like, six-figure salaries, and we had a fee of 20%. And I was like, doing the math in my head, I was like, what? Okay, I was like, okay, I'm in. How's that for some motivation, right? So Friday afternoon, 16-year-old kid, nothing to do, looking forward to a weekend. So, I just started pounding the phones, right? I got through 40 calls in a few hours and luckily had like three or four folks that, had provided me leads for potential referrals, right? I had about 25 resumes stacked up on the fax machine and felt really good about the progress that I'd made in just a few hours on a Friday afternoon. That was my first real taste, of recruiting. And honestly, I had no idea what I was doing, but it kind of felt natural to just talk to people. Although, I do have to admit, picking up the phone for that first cold call was a very anxious moment for me. And those that know me is like, I don't really have much anxiety or anything about that, about doing something new. So, that was something that I had to overcome. And it was quite a joy. Fast forward a year, after working on these searches a couple hours a day, after school and a couple days a week, I had placed 11 individuals with minimal help from mom, and that time had brought in, five new searches with those existing clients just because like they were really happy with the service we were providing them. And, some quick math over the course of that year or so, I made well over $200,000 and I was feeling pretty damn happy about that. I was like, I can do this. And, the money is fantastic, boom. Right. Like that's when it dawned on me at that point in my life. Like I knew the recruiting path was for me. So by the time I graduated, I had filled all the open roles, and at that point in time, the work had kind of dried up. Right. I wasn't really doing any like active business development. It was really just kind of, servicing these clients that kept coming to us for with these needs. Um, I didn't realize at the time, but in retrospect, I was very privileged, to have my mom introduce me into this industry. It was a fantastic experience to kind of, jump in the deep end, that kind of approach. And that alone forged a great career path for myself. So, I feel just super privileged, and, it's such a fantastic opportunity. So, after graduating high school, I spent a few years working in unrelated industries, but in like various sales and customer service oriented types of positions, which really helped me kind of build that skill set out, um, before really I was really able to navigate my way into a true, recruiting coordinator role, which actually came as a lead from my mom. It was with the company she was working with. But the funny part about it was that before she even approached me or her leader about it, I had actually already been referred by somebody at that company as well that my mom worked with, because he knew a former manager of mine that spoke really highly of just, my dedication and work ethic and all of those things. Right. So I guess it was kind of meant to be, I suppose. Right. So I started out as a coordinator, and that was really where I got to dig into more high volume and integrate technology into the process and just learn organizational skills, ability to leverage technology. I got introduced to sourcing via the job boards, and LinkedIn was just starting to become a thing, right? Like I recall I had been had that early adopter badge forever. Not sure where that one went, but I had it. Um, that role just exposed me to so much growth and, understanding of office politics, building relationships with peers and leaders and how important that was. And I was just honestly like a sponge. I wanted to learn all of it. Um, so, I found myself like volunteering to help out, with special projects, and looking back, I think, volunteering and just kind of raising my hand to, kind of explore new things and help where help was needed, it really just kind of, set me up really well, um, for the course of my career, right? So, from that point, after about a year or so, I think it was, I got promoted from a recruiting coordinator to a junior recruiter, and then promoted again into a role where I was, the only recruiter for the entire like Pacific Northwest region, right? This was a multi-million dollar business. I was placing hundreds of individuals in the tech and IT space per year. I was managing 5 to 8 offshore recruiters located in India. And I was also like responsible for keeping all of our consultants that were like in between projects busy, So that was a lot of fun. And after about 3 years, it was 2009, and, it was a tough time, right? So I was laid off. It was the first kind of experience with a layoff, that I've ever had, right? And so, and it was a really tough market at that point in time, right? So, I knew kind of what I was getting into. So, I kind of started to do some independent, recruiting consultant work, while job searching. And it took me about a year, before I really found a good job, right? So, I found this very small boutique, staffing company that specialized in business intelligence and marketing. I was hired as a sole recruiter for this small but growing company. And when I say small, I'm talking like, we were working out of the founder's house, having candidates over there. He had a dog, which was a lot of fun too. The total internal team was 3, including myself and the founder. During this role, I was able to really build something from concept to reality and operationalize it. We're talking about systems and tools, processes and procedures, throughout the entire, recruitment process. This included creating documentations on best practices, implementing an applicant tracking system, and customizing it to our own process, and so on, and so many other things, right? I grew so much. And I think one lesson learned during this time of my career was that I can be on my own. I can be my own worst enemy, at times, and look at obstacles as challenges to overcome. I mean, that's really where I kind of had to create that paradigm shift of like, gosh, this is hard to like, no, I got this. I just got to get more creative. I just got to put more research and brain power into creating solutions. Um, so that was a big lesson learned, throughout that portion of my career. And I was pushed really hard outside of my comfort zone many times with this organization, and learned to embrace the feeling of growth, which in the moment just feels a lot more like anxiety, right? Feels uncomfortable, right? And then, after almost 3 years, with this firm, I took one of those, the grass is greener, types of opportunities. A company that had been, kind of coming after me pretty hard, offering me a lot more money. And, so I decided, they were a very large national staffing company. And, I was literally like one of hundreds of recruiters, but it was cool because I got to directly work with my mom. We were kind of partnered together on certain accounts and such. So that was a lot of fun. But during this role, I was exposed to, recruiting at scale, right? And it was truly eye-opening to see the type of volume and the success this company was producing while still maintaining, a high touch, white glove experience with both candidates and clients, right? This was a great experience, but after about a year, I realized that this type of company was not for me in the long run, right? I just didn't really feel like I was thriving or making a big impact, kind of being one of many, in such a large organization. Um, at the end of the day, it was just too much about the numbers, and that just didn't really work for me back then, right? And I think we all know kind of what that means. Um, so what I do, hey, I boomeranged, right? So I went right back to that specialized, boutique agency that I had been with before. The company had continued to experience growth, so the team was much larger. I joined as an IC, but as the company continued to grow, I was quickly promoted into a management position where I was charged with building out the team, and eventually had 3 recruiters that I had hired and was responsible for. This is my really true like first shot of being a leader, and I'll admit, like, I had my ups and downs from a leadership perspective, and in retrospect, like, I realized that there was a miss on my part, as I truly did not build deep relationships with the team, and my management style was pretty hardcore production based. I learned a lot about what being a good leader is like, and took that with me to my current home with Avero, right? But before I came to Avero, and we're going on like 7 years here now, um, it was interesting because as I was approaching that job search, I was dead set on going like in-house and corporate and that kind of stuff, right? So I lined up all the interviews with all the FANG companies and startups and all of that kind of stuff. And going through all of these processes, I really learned more about the corporate recruiting role in the world, and just realized that it wasn't really for me, like, I just felt like it was more managing process than it was true hustle, and less opportunity to make a big impact. So I declined all the offers from, the corporate roles that I had, and started my job search again, targeting staffing agencies. And that's honestly when I found my work family, my people at Avero. So, now I've been with Avero for going on 7 years. I started out as a recruiting manager for, the Pacific Northwest region, because that's where I was. And then noticed the need to really drive consistency and create true best practices for the recruiting team across regions, right? And, this was something that kind of I had advocated for. And that led me to being promoted into the director of delivery position, which is basically responsible for, the entire recruiting function, of the company, right? Um, that was a lot of fun. As it shifted my focus from like, micro view to macro view, that kind of strategy mindset, right? And for the past 2-ish years or so, I've been leading our talent solutions team, which is Avero's specialized practice focused on recruiting for recruiters. Just building upon my leadership skills and truly owning a business from, planning, team building, strategic initiatives, so on and so forth, and I've got a team of 8 right now. And I feel like, over the course of the last couple of years is where I've experienced the most growth from a leadership perspective, because I really have, applied some of those lessons learned, and specifically around, building deep, meaningful relationships, with my people, and and being committed, to their growth, right? Even sometimes more than they are, right? So, it's been a lot of fun, over the course of the last couple of years. And yeah, gosh, I just couldn't ask for a better place to be. I love my team at Avero. I love what we're up to. And, we're pretty damn good at what we do, if I might say so myself. Um, so that's kind of my story, right? But, I wanted to kind of, bookend this conversation and topic with, just some lessons learned, right? And kind of really put some effort around all of that, right? So, I mean, before we go down this path, like throughout the course of my career, yeah, sure, it sounds all, bright and shiny and, promotions and all this kind of stuff. But like, I've won, I've failed, I've felt defeated, but in the end, I've always risen up, right? Everyone's journey is full of ups and downs, but the key is to keep moving forward and have confidence in yourself, no matter what. Like you can do anything you put your mind to, right? But I will say at some points in my career, I've just been in the right place at the right time. But yeah, I had to learn a lot and really stretch myself. And so, here are kind of some of the key takeaways after reflecting upon my own personal journey. So natural curiosity is key, right? It goes along the same lines of having like a growth mindset. I'm always looking to learn, seeking out new opportunities to add a new tool to my tool belt or to gain a new skill or to, gain some new knowledge, right? So that's number one. Number two, you just got to give up the need to be right. I have learned to leverage those around me for different ideas and perspectives. And I know I'm a unique individual. So are the folks around me. I respect that and value that fact, right? The world we live in, there's just a constant need for compromise one way or another. Like giving up the need to be right will help you problem solve so much faster. And that's what I've seen with myself, and just this attribute alone has not only helped me professionally but personally as well in a huge way, right? Like, hey, I can agree to disagree with anyone and move on, right? And I think that's something, that we all need to kind of, reflect upon. All right, number three, never wait for opportunity to present itself to you, right? For me, I always seek out, opportunity and capture it, right? I'm usually one of the first ones to like volunteer for something new, and I'm never afraid to speak up and put an idea on the table. That alone has created, two promotions for me in the last 5 years, right? So, it works, right? Um, Over the last couple of years, I really also embraced that I do not need credit. It's just so much more fulfilling for me to see someone that I coach or mentor win in business or in life, right? I don't need any special recognition or rewards. I'd rather my team get all of that, right? All right, number five, be comfortable being uncomfortable. Like that uncomfortable feeling, like that's the feeling of growth. It needs to be embraced, right? Never fear trying something new, that you've never done before. Failure is okay, right? I think, as part of our culture, like we've all embraced that. Like if you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough. And, as long as you can move forward and learn from that experience, like you're good, you know? And then last but not least, genuine relationships are the foundation of life. I myself give my best effort to really get to know people I work with and network with. Honestly, that's my favorite part of being a recruiter, all the relationships you get to build, all the things that you learn about people, all the common interests and that kind of stuff. It's just, that's what kind of feeds me and drives me, day in and day out is that just it hits my natural curiosity. I'm a people person and I like to be really social and it's just the right thing to do, you know? Um, so there you have it. That's my story. Those are my lessons learned. I would love to hear from the audience around like, hey, am I just totally crazy? Or like, does this make sense? Or, if you have any other questions about, my journey or anything like that, feel free to hit me up. Um, so thank you so much for tuning in on this episode. I really appreciate all the engagement and, I'll go ahead and sign out for today. I appreciate all of you. Thanks again for tuning in. Bye-bye.